Hello, and welcome to the podcast. Let us explore mighty ogres. Ogres are a fascinating and complex part of fairy tales, culture, and computer games. They have been present in stories and legends for centuries, and their depictions have evolved over time to reflect changing cultural attitudes and beliefs. In many traditional fairy tales, ogres are depicted as brutish, violent monsters who prey on humans and other creatures. They are often portrayed as dim-witted and physically imposing, with a fierce appetite for human flesh. These depictions of ogres were intended to frighten listeners and reinforce the importance of staying away from dangerous places and people. The word for ogre is of French origin and is associated with the name of the Etruscan god Orcus, who ate human flesh. The word ogre came into wider use in the works of Charles Perrault, a French writer. In his Fairy Tales of Mother Goose, he mentioned ogres as giant cannibals with dark powers. In folklore, ogres are often described as incredibly large and tall humanoid creatures. They have a disproportionately large head, thick hair, and often unusually colored skin. The image of ogres is closely related to the folklore image of giants and cannibals. A typical ogre is big and strong, but at the same time stupid and wild, preferring to solve all problems by physical force. Ogre tools are usually those of primitive societies. They use clubs and stones and rely on their own resilience and animal skins for protection. Their skin color ranges from dead yellow to dull black. Ogres have long, slippery hair that ranges from blackish blue to dark green. Their aroma is repulsive, reminiscent of the smell of curdled milk. Dressed in poorly crafted furs and animal skins, they take care of their weapons and armor only within limits. The habitat of these creatures varies. Usually they are found in forests, caves, and mountains, but some of them settle under bridges, like trolls. Especially brave ogres can settle close to people. In the English folktale, Jack and the Beanstalk, a giant and his wife lived in a huge house located in the sky. The trait most often attributed to ogres is an insatiable appetite, which is why they never miss an opportunity to feast on human flesh. They do this not out of malice, but rather for the sake of survival. Their idea of morality is different from that of humans. However, fairy tales also mention extremely cruel ogres who love to harm people. Ogres are also distinguished by a certain cunning, but at the same time stupidity, which is why they are often very easy to deceive. Sometimes the female ogres are more perceptive and therefore more kind to people than their hungry and narrow-minded husbands. Ogres have tremendous physical strength. They are able to destroy everything in their path and lift multi-ton objects. In some stories, they possess magical powers or abilities that make them even more dangerous. In a tale by Giambattista Basile, an ogre woman who kidnapped a girl taught her secret knowledge. The girl, as she escaped, stole 3 magic acorns from the ogre, each of which turned into a certain animal. Famous examples of ogres in folklore include the ogre in Puss in Boots and Jack and the Beanstalk. Other characters sometimes described as ogres include the title character from Bluebeard, the Beast from Beauty and the Beast, Grendel from Beowulf, the man-eating giant in Sinbad the Sailor, and the Oni of Japanese folklore. In games, ogres have also played a significant role. From classic RPGs like Dungeons & Dragons to modern titles like World of Warcraft, ogres have been a staple of fantasy gaming for decades. In many games, ogres are depicted as powerful enemies that players must defeat to progress through the story. However, in role-playing games, ogres have lost a significant part of their humanity and their unique magic. They have turned from childish monsters who will come eat you into the most ordinary creatures. a club became the main weapon of the ogres. They dress in poorly made skins. These creatures have little mind, barely enough to talk or use throwing weapons. Ogres prefer to attack in large numbers, and even better, from ambush. Ogres from the Warcraft universe are uncommonly smarter. In Azeroth, the world of humans, dwarves, and elves, they are considered emigrants, since their homeland is the warm and wooded world of Draenor. On the battlefield, ogres play the role of heavy armored vehicles, successfully resisting mounted knights. They look fat, hulking, strong, and mindless, but according to the developers of Warcraft, ogres are much smarter than they seem. This is especially true of the two-headed ogres bred by the orc mage Gul'dan. By some quirk of magic, they have 2 heads, only 3 eyes, and, as a rule, 1 bone horn. Such specimens are twice as smart as ordinary ogres. Although the heads often squabble with each other, they successfully use battle magic, command other ogres, and weave ingenious plots. Similar ideas were used by the developers of the Elder Scrolls. The ogres of Tamriel are typical tanks, with small brains and huge clubs. On high difficulty levels, they are dangerous even one-on-one, and if you meet a group of ogres, you better run. These creatures are clumsy, so a character can easily dodge their attacks by stepping back. Interestingly, Lord Drad of the Gold Coast was able to enslave the ogres and force them to work in the mine. If you free the poor fellows from the cages, you will see how the Lord himself works in the field under the supervision of the ogres. In the world of Warhammer Fantasy, ogres have always lived close to humans. Their kingdoms are not far from the tribal structure of the ogres in Warcraft, but the aggressiveness of these creatures is not directed at other races but mainly at themselves. Their ritual duels most often end with a dinner, during which a part of the loser's body is eaten. It is no coincidence that ogres make a cult out of food, because most of their vital organs are located in the stomach. Ogre butchers also become shamans. If you send ogres into space, then they will turn out to be Homo sapiens giganticus, or more simply, Ogrins in Warhammer 4000. Thousands of years in a world of high gravity on cold prison planets have turned once ordinary people into giants, strong, dumb, and executive. The latter made them useful for the Imperial Army. All you have to do is give Ogrins high-caliber assault rifles, weighted for use as clubs. Assign them to an intelligent officer or an Ogrin who has undergone a genetic intelligence upgrade, and they turn into weapons of mass destruction. The most popular of all ogres is, of course, Shrek. He stands out. He is an ogre who doesn't tend to eat humans. Good-natured Shrek lives in a swamp and pretends to be a scary monster just so that people leave him alone. Interestingly, actor Mike Myers, voicing the Green Ogre, imitated a slight Scottish accent, so Shrek's pronunciation is quite exotic. This example shows that ogres began to take on new meanings and connotations. Shrek films portrayed ogres as lovable and misunderstood characters who struggle to fit into society. The terrible ogre has a good heart and suffers from loneliness, although he does not admit it to himself. This depiction of ogres as sympathetic heroes has become increasingly popular in recent years, reflecting a broader shift in cultural values towards acceptance and inclusivity. If you look closely at science fiction and fantasy, ogres can be found anywhere from Disney's Gummy Bears to Clive Lewis's The Chronicles of Narnia. From arcade games like Tekken to EverQuest, Final Fantasy, or Magic: The Gathering. The authors often try to get away from the stereotype of the evil, stupid ogre. After all, there are already too much such monsters in fantasy. The unique qualities of this creature, strength, wilderness, and passion for human flesh, make it possible to play on contrasts, presenting it in a humorous way, smart and even kind. So if you meet ogres in any game, don't judge them harshly. These mighty savages should cause not only fear but also respect. It's easy to be strong and evil in fantasy. It is more difficult to maintain individuality among trolls, giants, orcs, and other monsters. Thank you for watching. Who is your favorite ogre in culture? Write it in the comments. See you soon!